You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. The Options Insider Radio Network is sponsored by Fidelity Investments. At Fidelity, you'll always get a great value for your options trades. And with powerful investing tools that provide clear next steps, plus independent research and a wide range of investment types, we can help you make better trading decisions. Learn more about options trading with Fidelity at fidelity.com/options. Options trading entails significant risk and is not appropriate for all investors. Certain complex option strategies carry additional risk. Before trading options, contact Fidelity Investments by calling 800-544-5115 to receive a copy of the characteristics and risks of standardized options. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE SIPC. Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity. Provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody, that music means it is time once again for the Crypto Rundown, the program here on the old network where we break down the sometimes just crazy, just volatile world of crypto trading in all of its many forms. Of course, we'll talk the spot, we'll talk the futures, we'll get into some of the options and the volatility and the skew and all that fun stuff. We also take a nice look into what's going on in the realm of crypto trading and products. And so without further ado, let's do that as we dive on into the Crypto Hot Seat.
Forget about cold storage. It's time to turn up the heat on thought leaders from the world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time to take their place on the Crypto Hot Seat.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Crypto Hot Seat, the portion of the show where we welcome on guests from throughout the world of crypto trading and indeed beyond, and proceed to pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listener. And next up in the old hot seat, we have a newcomer to the program and indeed to the network. He's Rob Levy, the co-founder of Gordian Block Capital, as well as the co-founder over there at Hxro Games. Rob, welcome to the Crypto Rundown program.
Mark, thank you very much for having me. Excited to be here.
And Rob, as we are wont to do with all of our first-timers here on the network, why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of an overview of your background as well as what it is you guys do at Gordian Block and Hxro Games.
Sure thing. Well, first things first, I studied economics at Duke University.
I won't hold that against you at all. The dismal science.
Exactly. And then I came back from school, and during high school and college, I had clerked at the CBOE and learned the options market making profession. And I immediately fell in love with it. The excitement of being on the floor. I was a math, science guy, the numbers, just that it was a sport, a game. It was very clear to me right then that, holy cow, this is a game that I want to play. And after school, I went down to the CBOE, and I was a market maker, a DPM at the CBO for about 5 years. and then continued my options market making career at the Board of Trade. I moved over to the agricultural options. I went into the corn options pit. My father is in the meat business, and I worked with him for years in the meat business as well from when I was young. And a lot of crazy things were happening in the agricultural commodities around '08 with the commodities boom. And I honestly couldn't believe how volatile the world of corn and soybeans and wheat was. I
know a lot of guys who did that trade a few years later. Equity vol kind of died away. They all left the SIBO and went to corn was a popular destination. So you were a few years ahead of that train, it sounds like.
It was, when I got into the corn options pit at the end of 2010, there were about 225 market makers in the pit, and it was shoulder to shoulder. I mean, you could not find a spot. It was crazy. And there were a lot of CBOE transplants after, the whole electronification of the markets and multi-listing. The SIBO ended up, kind of being the place where people left to go look for other, quote-unquote, single-listed products where there was a little more edge for the market makers. And the Board of Trade really provided a venue for the next 10 years. And eventually, now all the corn options, they're 1/8 of a cent wide. It is, it's received the same sort of treatment from...
It comes to them all at the end of the day, doesn't it?
It does. This world's getting very efficient quickly.
Hence crypto, right?
Exactly. And then you saw a lot of people, they didn't believe the volatility of the crypto markets. And a lot of people then made the jump who used to trade order flow and provide liquidity and make markets, ended up moving over to crypto because there was a real need for liquidity and there was edge there. So that's, market makers, it was less back in the day, and you would know even a little better than me, it was less, quote unquote, trading. It was more being the house, being the casino where you had to provide capital and liquidity, but there was still edge for doing so. The markets were still kind of
wide. That's how
wide.
they sold it to all of us when we first got on the floor. It's like you're the house in the casino. And that analogy sounds great,
Yeah.
And it lures everyone to the dark side as a result.
Exactly. You're the house, but the odds aren't really kind of set in your favor. It's not like you're setting slot machines and or setting a dealer up at the blackjack table where kind of your overall long-term odds. It's a little different. A lot more strategy in there.
And I like to ask everybody, especially guys like you who come from the more traditional financial world, everyone has that kind of moment, that inflection point, that come to Jesus, whatever moment it was for them that brought them on board, got them interested in crypto. I'm curious, what was that moment for you?
Well, it's funny. This is a story that I remember so vividly. I remember standing in the corn options pit, and I was a big Twitter guy. Twitter was such a crucial tool for me as a trader, as a market maker, to really extract information in a way that was new for us in these markets. And I remember standing in the corn options pit and pulling up Twitter, and someone had retweeted like the price of Bitcoin was an account. And I saw it listed the price of Bitcoin on like 4 different exchanges. And I don't know if the price was $500, whatever it was, but I saw on one exchange it was $490. On another exchange it was $520. So there was such a big discrepancy between the 4 exchanges listed, and I was like, this can't be anything substantive or real with such a arb opportunity between 4 exchanges. When I'm sitting down there and people are trying to arb out fractions of pennies, I wrote it off as it can't really be anything with volume. And that was one of the biggest mistakes because I did not look into what is Bitcoin. And that was, I think, 2014 or 15. And then at the end of 2016, I started looking into it because I ended up following that. And that's when the first article I read, it triggered, and then I read the white paper, and I was like, holy cow, this is going to change the world. And that was it. I went down the rabbit hole.
And is that when you founded Gordian Block, or how did you get to that point?
Gordian Block we founded in January of 2018. So I was still making markets and running an options desk, trading the agricultural commodities through January of 18. And that's when, you have 12 screens that you're sitting in front of, and 12 are all, ag stuff. and then all of a sudden 1 turns into Bitcoin and crypto, and then 2 of 12, and then you start to realize, holy cow, the volatility in these markets, it's unprecedented. It started reminding me of my days clerking at the CBOE when the internet stocks were going absolutely crazy. And I honestly never thought I would see volatility like that in a whole asset class again. And it just, I started getting the chills, and I just knew, this is a market that I need to be in. And that's when I made the jump.
So you guys at Gordian Block, are you fund managers? Are you mining? Are you market making out there? And then lead us into the Hxro games and how you got lured to the crypto gaming of all interesting areas.
Sure. I met a guy, Dan Gunsberg, at a prop trading firm I was at, and then coincidentally our daughters were in the same preschool class, so we started to get to know one another, and we both had the same feeling, because Dan was a trader back in the day, and he traded NASDAQ stocks. He's a little older than me, so he was a great trader of flat price and order book. And back in the day when the market was a little bit different, it wasn't completely run by the big HFT shops and the Jumps and Citadels. There were still plenty of locals or sole prop guys that ran books that were trading a lot of paper and a lot of volume, and they weren't with, any big tech firm. So Dan traded tech stocks, and it was the same. He had the same feeling about crypto, and we both said, you know what, let's make the move. Let's partner up and do this. So we had been getting, questions from friends and family about what is this crypto, what is Bitcoin, and more importantly, how do we get exposure to it? What should we do? And the frequency of those questions just it increased dramatically. What should I do? What should I buy? At the time, I think COINBASE maybe had 3 assets on there. It was Bitcoin, it was Ethereum, and Litecoin. And then the next year they added Bitcoin Cash. But, it started out with, if you're going to do it, buy 75% Bitcoin, and then, sprinkle a little Ethereum and Litecoin in there as well, because they're on there. But, Bitcoin, to me, was the main character in the show. Like, you got to own Bitcoin. Bitcoin to me was going to change everything, and it had the network effects and all that to go along with it. But so we started a small fund with some personal funds and friends and family, and we started. We were actively trading Bitcoin and altcoins. We've invested in a mining operation. We invested in Hxro, which was a startup, and we do a lot of different things at Gordian Block, and we look at the market in many different ways. So that's what we do over there.
And you come from the options world. Do you only trade the underlying? Do you trade the futures? Do you go OTC to the options? What are you trading on the crypto front?
We're trading. We trade spot and we trade futures. We're trading CME futures, and we were excited when those were listed because the highest volume futures contracts and derivatives contracts in crypto are unfortunately on platforms that, for regulatory purposes, they block U.S. users. And like BitMEX, for instance, the volume and liquidity on their inverse perpetual swap is tremendous. But U.S. people can't trade on there, and the CME future provided a way to really get the margin that was needed for professionals, and had lack of counterparty risk that a lot of people see is a problem with some of these crypto exchanges that we're using day to day. So it was very familiar for kind of professionals who had been in the trading space and were looking for that platform. They already had an account at CME. They had a clearing firm, and so then they can start trading it there.
And then you somehow get along the way. You mentioned you kind of invest and you get involved in Hxro, which is ticker HXRO, which is, and we've heard about this many times. Our old friend here on the program, Bill Ulivari, he's sung your praises to us many times. So he's the reason you're sitting in that hot seat there today.
Oh, Bill's a great guy.
You got to check out this HXRO. There's something cool with it. So tell us about what is HXRO? What is this Hxro gaming token? How did you gamify crypto trading?
Sure. Well, Hxro, just high level, it's a player versus player gaming platform that merges crypto trading with social gaming. We've created a new market segment for gaming on digital assets through easy to understand trading-based games that have a high level of social play and community management. To us, I was a pit trader for years in Chicago, and Dan was in, he had a history in the trading pits as well. And, what's lost in the old floor trading world was the social aspect of trading. And things have changed dramatically. But back in the day, between knowing exactly who your counterparty was when, the Goldman Sachs broker came into the pit with an order and bought 10,000 puts in EMC, you knew that was the guy who owns 10,000 June 35 puts in EMC. And it was, clear as day. And you knew when that guy came in, maybe a month later, and the stock had gone down $10 and he quotes the June 35 puts, okay, that's the guy who owns all these and he's going to sell them back out to us. Well, that started changing over time. And also, on top of that, you got to know a little bit about the guys in the pit standing around you for 8 hours a day, what they were trading. You could see it. You make eye contact. You see who's aggressively selling something for the last week, who's aggressively buying something for the last week. You got to know people's positions more. And, the art of being in a pit and standing with people eye to eye has, it's kind of lost these days because it's a much, much more blind trade now. You don't see the clearing firm of who you're trading with. You don't see them face to face. It's all electronic, and you really don't have a feel for order flow like we used to. And it was much more of a social and even psychological game, more even like poker back in the day. But we wanted to bring that social aspect to trading, but not trading as we know it. We really set out to create a game, and that's where I think we're doing a great job.
So you're bringing pit trading to crypto effectively. That's the goal. The pit trading experience. That
is the goal. It's that experience. It's like when you get off the escalator at 8:20 before the 8:30 open, and there's that buzz on the floor already, and that buzz really was elevated throughout the day. It gets more heavy during the open and during the close, but there were plenty of days where that insane buzz was with you all day long.
Today would probably be one of those days if we were down there right now.
Today would, yes. And both places. The Dow's down 800 and Bitcoin's up $1,000. So, yeah, there's volatility everywhere right now in the market.
So I log into the Hxro, I start trading the HXRO. Do I hear crowd noise around me and chatter? Is that how it works?
It's coming. Right now, you would log on, and we're in beta. And we launched this private beta for the first couple months, January 1st. And we really, in crypto, it was a lot of, in years prior, people would put out a white paper and try to, raise money to pay for development of whatever project, protocol, whatever it was. And we wanted to lead with a product. So that's what we did. We put out a product first and foremost and wanted to get it in people's hands because you never really know, we have this vision and this idea, and in our heads, it's brilliant. And, I knew in my heart of hearts, this is going to be amazing. This is great. Because I'm a power user. I was the guy who, apart from standing in the trading pit for 8 hours a day, I'd be sitting in front of my screens at home trading the overnight. I would be at my desk at 5 a.m. trading the Globex markets. I was sitting in front of my computers and looking at order books, order flow, time and sales, monitoring everything constantly. So the game was made for a guy like me, and it was just purely addictive sitting in front of my own game that I made. And that's when I was like, oh my God, is going to be great. I got to get this out.
Now, you said it's in beta now, but it is kind of trading. I noticed you have some volume. How are those early days? How's the early beta trading going?
It's been great. I mean, from the first 30 minutes, we invited like 35 kind of big influencer types from crypto. They were either traders or in the market, but whatever they were. We invited them on New Year's Day, and we thought people would be home, maybe nursing a hangover, but with the family, but looking for something to do. And within 30 minutes of people getting on there, and we have a troll box, or it was a Telegram room at the time, where we would all be in there chatting during the games. And within 30 minutes, we were getting the most insane response from people about how unbelievably exciting this new way of looking at the market was, and that they couldn't get enough. And it was it was really, really great at the beginning to see other people have that response that you could only dream of having. I knew it from myself, but you just never know. Am I a freak who just loves staring at trading screens, or are other people going to like this? But then when other people loved it, and even non-traders and non-crypto people, I was like, all right, we're onto something here.
Looks like you had a pretty decent spike there. It looks like in late June, like around the 12th, it pretty much doubled. Went from like about 4.5 cents up to 10. Is that just what was driving all the paper then in late June?
I don't know about really order flow in the token per se. I think it's people, if they want to play the game, they go and buy the token. And that's really kind of what it's all about. We wanted to make sure that, this platform, we have a pure utility token. People use our token on the platform. They don't use it anywhere else. They use it to enter contests. They use it for payouts. We're, announcing a really robust rewards program in a couple weeks, and we've got a really great use case for the Hxro token. So I don't know what drives that sort of flow, but some people want they want to have tokens to play and really kind of build their stack on the site. We've had people go from 2,000 tokens to start in their account up to 400,000. I mean, like 200xing their stack through pure gameplay.
So it's like the old quarter model in the arcade. You come in, you buy a token, and you buy your quarter, and you play your game. And I guess if you win, you win more tokens at the Chuck E. Cheese, and you keep going from there. Is that the model?
Yes, that's the model. And then you're going to get discounts for having the token on the platform. There's going to be other great ways to utilize it. But yeah, I mean that's the model, and we've had some amazing stories. This 2,000 to 400,000. We've had a guy who went down to a balance of 10 tokens and then built 10 back up to 90,000, and that was pure play. I mean, it's really it's a different way to play the market, and that's kind of what we've created. Bringing the clock into the game, it changes things. It takes out one of the hardest things about trading, and which is the entry and the exit. And then what to do when it goes a little bit either in your favor or in your face. That decision of when do I get out and when do I get out if it's going in my face? When do I get out if it's going my way? And so we've removed this entry and exit, replaced it with the clock, with a 5-minute game or a 15-minute game or a 1-hour game. And it's a little bit of a different skill set. And it's really rewarding.
It's almost like trading the binaries at that point, the 5-minute and then 20-minute type contracts that they have at a place like Nadex and things like that. So if folks are interested, if they want to sink their teeth into Hxro, if they want to buy the token, or maybe it's in beta, can they go out and buy the token right now? Is it on a COINBASE?
Yeah,
how do they go about getting it?
The token's listed on IDEX, and it's listed on Bittrex International. Right now, in our current state, U.S. people can't play the game in its current state. It's all non-U.S. people, and that's just for regulatory purposes. But yeah, non-U.S. listeners, you can definitely get in there and play the game. And the minimum entry per contest is 10 Hxro, so it's about 50 cents. And you can really, one of the best things about this is the people who say that they've learned more about charts and about technical analysis through playing these games than they have through any books or studying technical analysis, because it's a different sort of way to break down the charts and to look at the candles, because you're technically trying to predict whether the next 5-minute candle is going to be green or red, or as we call it, moon or rect.
Moon or rect, I like that. You kind of mentioned the regulatory issue, though. You're hardly the first person to sit in that chair and bring up that issue. And we've had people come through all the time, and they have great products. And maybe it's a warrant; it's only available for European or things like that, because the regulatory space is so crazy. On the crypto front, we had Commissioner Peirce on recently. In fact, it's going to be hitting the network soon. I sat down with her, crypto mom herself, to kind of talk about her thoughts on the crypto landscape and what she thinks from a regulatory perspective. But I'm curious for you. You have a startup in this space. This is a not uncommon complaint that U.S. is kind of slow moving on the crypto front. We're seeing Australia, Europe, Asia really take the lead in a lot of these areas going forward. Is that something that concerns you, that the U.S. is maybe starting to fall behind a little bit on the crypto regulatory front? Or given the fact that we are so much more of a developed economy than a lot of these, it makes sense that we would maybe play a little bit of a wait and see before we dive into this space?
It's concerning for me a little bit, just because traveling overseas, and I was at the Asian Blockchain Summit at the beginning of July, traveling overseas, it is so evident how fast moving everybody else is. And also, it just seems, and I don't know if it's causal or not, but the people overseas are much more into crypto than U.S. people are. And, I think they're viewing crypto and this new opportunity and technological innovation as this way for them to get in front of it and maybe get a little bit of edge, use the U.S.'s slowness and their deliberate method of going through the motions with all the regulatory to jump in front and get more market share than they would normally. Like back in the internet boom, it seemed like a lot of the innovation was taking place in the U.S. and maybe it's because we are sheltered. We live here. If you don't travel, you don't really get to see as much about what's going on elsewhere. But in crypto, it seems like everywhere else, the excitement and that the urgency to establish businesses and establish a climate that is conducive for development in those areas, it is much greater than it is here. And I think we'll see. Is it going to hurt the U.S. in the end? It might. I don't know. At the margin, I think it will, for sure. I mean, we saw an announcement that Circle, Poloniex, they are moving their operations to Bermuda. Our operating company is in Bermuda. You see the big exchanges, they're offering different products to U.S. customers than to overseas customers. It's really it's a minefield out there. You got to really kind of navigate carefully. But for U.S. users, we just said we're not going to mess around until there's more clarity. We can't let U.S. people play the game, and hopefully in some time we will we'll be able to let U.S. people play in the normal hero games.
You're a representation of one of my favorite trends to watch evolve here in the crypto space, here in Chicago in particular. Obviously, we interact with a lot of the professional side of the trading and the derivatives world here in Chicago, having been from it. All of our programming, a lot of our guests and contributors come from that world. And as you mentioned, the pits have been, shall we say, winding down over the last decade or plus or so. And so a lot of the people in that space have been looking for new products, new iterations. And your kind of story there, I think, is emblematic of a lot of guys saying, hey, these markets are kind of wide and they're not really regulated to death yet. And there's actually some quote unquote edge here if you know what you're doing. And that's appealing. I've heard a lot of people sit in that chair and tell me, hey, this is like the early days of the SIBO in the late 70s, early 80s when things were super wide and it wasn't regulated to death and you could make a living trading that. So there have been a lot of people. Bill, who's been on the show many times, he's another one who's been, lured by that. It's fascinating to watch the people in this space who have a lot of derivatives expertise now taking that and applying it to the crypto world and seeing how just in the last few years, Chicago has really become the mecca, the new home for crypto trading, the spot, the futures, the growing OTC options. There's a lot, and it's all really centered here. And watching, sometimes the collision of that old school kind of trader mentality with the, shall we say, new world techno-anarchist crypto mindset, how they come together. Sometimes they clash. Sometimes they work together for the benefit of all. But it has been fascinating to watch all that come together. And you're a good example of that. Has it been fascinating for you to watch as well, just the rapid adoption and evolution and collision of the crypto world with the hardcore derivatives trading world here in Chicago?
Absolutely. I mean, when it comes to derivatives, Chicago is, if not the center of the world when it comes to that, it is one of the top 3 locations.
You can say it. It's the center.
Yeah.
It's just me and you talking here.
No, I mean, it is. It always has been for me. And it wasn't even a question of when, but you could see in late 17, I think every single prop trading firm out there, I mean, volatility in the normal markets had been driven so low and even oddly low. It just gets repriced on an event and then it'll trade at a different level and then it'll just get hit again. And a lot of that is due to, the just global monetary policy with zero interest rates and everyone searching for yield and selling option premium and all that. And vol just, got hit everywhere. But every prop trading firm started to, open a crypto desk. And whether it was OTC trading at first or trying to arb the different markets because that was still available. There weren't really any huge arbs, machines that were working yet. It was clear to me that, the Chicago derivative scene is going to get into this heavily. And then, you see DRW with Cumberland, like they were, the first, and they have done a really, really great job. And now a lot of other houses and shops are catching up and doing a lot of business in crypto because, derivatives trading companies look for volatility. And there is not one other asset class on earth right now with the volatility that matches crypto. And that's just a fact. And that means that professionals in this space, they're going to look for volatility. They're going to go there and they're going to trade it. And that's what they do. And so to me, it wasn't really a surprise. And I'm really glad, being a Chicago guy and living here my whole life, that Chicago was going to be one of those centers of this crypto market. Now, obviously, the regulatory landscape makes it different. I mean, Chicago is the center of these exchange-traded Bitcoin futures, which, the volume on those is really, it's come up a lot. But honestly, from traveling and from networking and building our network in crypto, Hong Kong is really another huge center where you're seeing a lot of operations set up of some of these top new firms.
And let's get into all that, some of the trading, the volatility, the action you just mentioned as we keep on rolling into our Bitcoin breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trading activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown. This is indeed the portion of the program where we break down what the heck is trading and what's been going on in the crypto space since our last show. And boy, has a lot been happening. In fact, coming into today's show now, we're seeing most of the major broad equity markets selling off like crazy. They were off I think we talked them up here a little bit, Rob, because they were off nearly 4% when we started the crypto rundown here. Now they're off a paltry a little over 3%, and with the NASDAQ leading the charge to the downside, about 3.6%. And volatility, of course, equity volatility at least raring north, well over the 20 handle into 23, threatening 24. And of course, with all this maelstrom, all this turbulence in the broad equity space, we're seeing, I guess you can call it a bit of a crypto flight to quality, call it what you will out there, but crypto is on the move. It's on the rampage. It's up quite a bit, up 7.5% just today alone, threatening the 11,800, threatening to break through 12,000. It's kind of been all over the place even today. Coming into showtime was about 11,760, or about an hour before showtime. Then it got up to threatening 11,900 and is settling off right back down again a little bit here in the latter portion of the show, right down to about 11,780. That's kind of been the tale we've seen all week, with the rally pretty much starting right after we turned off the microphones on last week's show on Monday, and it's been kind of rallying ever since we saw it break the 10,000. Remember, it was at last show we were at about 90, not quite 9,500, pretty close to it. And then we started rallying, broke 10,000 by Wednesday. It broke 11,000 yesterday, pretty much. And it's been rally ho ever since then. Rallied another 800 or so, almost 1,000 just in the last 24 hours. A lot of it on the backs of this tweet coming out of the administration that they are, of course, going to ratchet up the tariffs again and escalating the trade war. And people looking at crypto as maybe, call it a hedge, call it what you will, for the currency market not being exposed to these rapid fluctuations. There also have been some conspiracy theories floating around out there over the last 24 hours about a lot of money in China trying to move away from the yuan and get out of some of that devaluation and into something like Bitcoin, which isn't going to be devalued. So all of that, the conspiracy theories, the flight to quality, call it what you will, all of that mixing together and driving Bitcoin ever farther north just in the last 24 hours. Rob, we were talking here all about the gaming and all that fun stuff, but obviously you're out there managing money in the crypto space as well. What's this last week, and particularly this last 24 hours, what's that been like for you guys out there?
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, fundamentally, I can't think of a better situation for the Bitcoin thesis. I mean, we have, what many are calling, an all-out currency war at this point. We've got our president, Trump, who's surprising people with tweets out there last week talking about China and how he was going to, up the tariffs without talking to them, just kind of putting it out there. And there was a side story about Mnuchin, urging him to make a call before he tweeted. And this whole back and forth between the U.S. and China, and the yuan is at that kind of that level, that 7 level.
Yeah, it's been about a decade since they've broken below that. Yes.
Yeah, and people are looking at that and saying if the 7 level goes, which it did, and I think Hong Kong last night, then this currency war is on. And I don't think it's black and white by any stretch, like, 7 below that, we're on or off. The bottom line is the climate between, two of the biggest countries on earth when it comes to currency and trade, it's nasty right now. And, Trump is a wild card. He's a rough New York-style negotiator, and he's got his methods to the madness. But right now, when it comes to this currency war between us and China, and then you throw in what's going on in the debt markets across the globe, negative rates out 50 years in Germany. I think that finally happened on Friday. Switzerland was maybe the week before that. We obviously know what goes on in Japan with rates and the negative rates there. We see what's happening here in the U.S. where, we had our first lowering of rates, and, that cycle where we were going to try to normalize and get rates a little bit higher because, hey, the stock market was at all-time highs, unemployment at lows. Maybe we can take our foot off this easing program. But the fact that this is really kind of an experiment in monetary policy that we were witnessing the last 10, 11, 12 years, and I think it's becoming more clear to more and more people that getting out of this, unwinding this trade, this global central bank trade, it's not just here, it's everywhere, is going to be a lot more difficult than maybe people think. And that right there leads everyone to believe that no fiat currency is really safe. They're going to have to continue to buy bonds, continue to print money to do that. Interest rates are low. Where are you going to hold, a portion of your wealth in that to protect yourself against further debasement of currencies? And in the U.S., we're kind of sheltered. We don't really worry about that because, the U.S. dollar, it's the reserve currency. Even that tweet Donald Trump made about Bitcoin, when in the end it was, we're in the U.S., the greatest currency of all time, and nothing's happening to us. Well, that's great, but if you keep printing money and this interest rate policy continues the way it's gone, then people are going to have to look for other places to store wealth. And that's why Bitcoin, it's a great alternative. It's got a generational tailwind. That the younger generation are behind this. They are into it. And, I feel old. I'm going to be 40 years old in a couple weeks. And I feel old in this crypto industry, which is, the first time in a while. But everyone's young. And the younger people, they're embracing Bitcoin. They're embracing crypto. And they're saying that's the future. And that's just one tailwind, on top of the whole macroeconomic landscape, which to me points to owning gold, owning Bitcoin, because it's getting less clear what's going to happen with, fiat currencies and the sovereign debt issue. So
did you ever imagine when you were out there in the corn pits mining this little thing called Twitter for some nuggets way back in the day, that we'd see enormous market moving tweets from the administration that would change the entire landscape with one fell swoop? It seems like a far cry from those days till now.
It's unbelievable. I mean, that Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter, I mean, how happy is he that the president of the United States, who's this, polarizing, controversial figure at this point, pretty much exclusively uses the Twitter platform
that's his megaphone.
Put his thoughts and policy out there. It's unbelievable. And even, Jack, I'm happy because he's a huge Bitcoin proponent. I mean, huge. And he sees the vision, and even, he's done a great job with the Square app. I mean, it's not just some kind of ancillary thing anymore. We're going to be seeing a lot more about Bitcoin in the coming months, a lot more. And, a question you raised earlier about this Chicago thing, I think we're going to see a lot more like SRO type situations, like a self-regulatory organization where some of these exchanges, whether they're new, I think a lot of new ones, they're just like the CME and SIBO were, where like whether it's FINRA or NFA, I mean, we're going to see, I believe, some more self-regulatory that is going to kind of take over. I think it needs to. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of that. So, this can stop being viewed as, all negative, but really something that's great for people to take advantage of.
What we can take advantage of as well is the volatility, and we're certainly seeing some of that out there in Bitcoin right now. In fact, a little bit less, though, than we did last week. 30-day realized, again, all these data courtesy of our friends over there at sk3w.co. Check it out. Great place to look at for all sorts of Bitcoin volatility and skew analysis. 30-day realized down about quite a bit, about 30 points. So it was about 125 on last show, about 95% coming in to this show. Still obviously very volatile. That's 30 days, so a little bit of a lagging measure, of course. The options volume out there, again, DERIBIT, the leading platform. So again, like we were mentioning before, off limits, unfortunately, for most of you here in the U.S. And the volume, even though we've been moving up, till today, it was a pretty steady climb. And so it wasn't translating into a lot of options volume over there on DERIBIT. Pretty much every day has been at or below the 30 million level, which is kind of the barometer, kind of the threshold for where you see when the day is getting a little bit more active. The term structure, you might imagine out there, the volatility term structure, looking at it right now, pretty backward, given what's going on the last 24 hours. Quite a steep bid here to the AUG contract expiring in a couple of days up there. Looks like to about 110 or so. Then it settles off to like a paltry 95 or so out there in December. Last week's show, the call to put had been flipped on its head. It was put to call because it was all puts leading the charge The calls accounted for a paltry 36.6% of the open interest. That's back up to right around half now, about 54.5%. So calls taking a little bit more charge. Again, not exactly surprising given the fact that we've seen quite a resurgence, particularly in the last 24 hours. Also seen a resurgence of OI, open interest, up to over 500,000, or I should say 533 million, up from about 394 million on last show. That's still down from the record high, which is about 635 million. That was about a month and change ago, but still OI out there growing, even though the volumes are somewhat light. Speaking of light volumes, look here at the futures over there on CME. And it's, Rob, it's a kind of a wild day. The markets are kind of moving a bit. Bitcoin's moving a bit. You'd think the futures would be lighting it up today. The front fog futures up 1,325 handles as we speak. It's at 11,925 right now. The SEP futures over 12,000. And yet only about not even 4,000 contracts on the tape today. Again, it's a 5x coin, so it's got a multiplier there. But still, if you add up all the volume across the months, you had about around 4,500 contracts, which compared to some recent days we've seen of 25, 30,000 plus contracts. Does that surprise you that it's kind of light out there today, given all the other things that work in the market right now?
The only thing that doesn't surprise me about that number is the fact that the traditional markets are going nutty today. So I think that the focus for a lot of these players who do trade on the CME, I think that they're probably focused on the VIX and the move in the Dow, down 800 points.
They've got other stuff to worry about today.
Yeah, I think they've got other stuff to worry about, and so that's the one reason. But the one thing about these CME futures, which I'm not hugely a fan of, is these gaps. This weekend, like Bitcoin it's a 24/7 asset, and a lot of trading goes on during the weekend. I mean, it doesn't stop. So I don't love these CME gaps, and a lot of technical people will point to these gaps, and I just think it's a little different than a normal gap in a chart when something's trading all weekend long, and the CME closes Friday at 4 p.m. Chicago time, and then opens up Sunday night at 5 p.m. Chicago time. So it's 48 hours of closed, and like today we gapped up, and then so what are people going to do? Are they going to close all positions? Are they going to hedge somewhere else, hedge in spot or hedge elsewhere for the weekend to keep the positions open? But that, to me, I really do wish that CME could have this thing trading on the weekends.
It is an issue. We see a lot. They love the Globex. They always talk about that. And a lot of these commodities are moving a lot more lately and moving beyond traditional Chicago trading hours. And Bitcoin is certainly one of those. Hence these crazy opens of 1,100 point swings. That could certainly put some people off the product. Speaking of products, let's get into a little bit of what else is trading out there with a little bit of the old altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, coming up here towards the tail end of the show, let's dive into a little bit of the old altcoin. A lot going on out there as well. Let's kick it off as we are wont to do with our market cap. Remember, take these numbers with a huge grain of salt, depending on how you look at the overall market cap. There's a lot of fluff in there. I think the percentages, still hold true. Hence, that's why we talk about those. Number one, of course, Bitcoin. Number two, ETH, with a little bit shy of 12%, about 11.87%. Number three, our old friend XRP, a little bit north of the 6%. So seems like a distant memory now when XRP and ETH were jostling for the number two market cap spot. Number four, Bitcoin Cash, just shy of 3%, 2.98%. And round out the top five, Litecoin, 2.94%. Let's start there, actually, because Litecoin is the one that's kind of on everybody's mind. Outside of Bitcoin today, that's moving like crazy. Litecoin has been making some headlines in and of itself. Coming into Showtime, it was up nearly 9 handles on the week. It's given up some of that. Now, it was at about 99. Now it's at looks like about 97. It's off about a handle. It's up about 8 handles net since last week. But it's not quite the net move that's been drawing a lot of attention. Of course, we've been talking about this for a while, Rob. I'm not sure how much you guys play out there in the Litecoin. But, of course, we hit the halving event everyone's been talking about for quite some time. Actually triggered today on Monday. The block, 1,680,000, that triggered the halving event It's supposed to, of course, have it every 840,000 blocks, which typically occurs every 4 years after that. Now, the reward is being cut in half from 25 down to 12 and a half. Litecoin typically seen as a bullish scenario, a bullish setup, because, of course, the supply going to be reduced at a certain point. Demand, if it continues the same, it should, cause a little bit of a bullish run-up. Hence, the large run-up we've seen in Litecoin over the last few months, even though people are saying, and it's a fair point, that over the last month, of course, we've seen a little bit of turbulence out there in that price of Litecoin. People are also looking at this, Rob, because Bitcoin, the big dog in the space, they're having coming up in 2020. So a lot of people are looking at this as a bit of a test bed, a test run, a trial run, if you will, for what we can expect when Bitcoin actually halves itself. So you guys have probably a couple of dogs in this fight, because you said you are investors in a mining shop. So do these halving type events, some people are saying a lot of the miners are going to shut their rigs down, at least switch them away from Litecoin, because it's just not worth doing it. So is that of concern to you? And also, do you think the analysis of what's going on in Litecoin with the halving, does that really apply to Bitcoin, or is it that kind of its own beast?
I mean, I think yes and no. It most definitely is its own beast. And but part of this game, like, there's two ways to look at altcoins, and everyone does it differently. I mainly look at altcoins in terms of Bitcoin. So I look at the price of altcoins in Satoshis. So Litecoin at $97, to me, I'm more looking at it as about 900,000 Satoshis or Sats. And over the last month and a half, it's been cut in half. It was trading at the end of mid-June, it was trading 1.8 million Satoshis, and right now it's 900,000 Satoshis, meaning that if you owned a certain amount of Litecoin and wanted to convert it into Bitcoin, which most people do on these exchanges, right now you would get half as much Bitcoin for the Litecoin you own. And a lot of people were making this play on the halving and getting long, and how much fund flow or retail flow that is up in the air, and depending on if people were putting fresh fiat into the market, whether it was dollars, euros, yuan, whatever it was, the bottom line is Litecoin, I think it got to be a really crowded trade. And then when people saw it wasn't acting the way that they thought it would leading into this halving, then it got really crowded on the way out, and a lot of people dumped it. But against Bitcoin, I think 99% of alts out there have had an absolutely abysmal few month stretch here, because when Bitcoin rallies, and this has largely been a Bitcoin driven rally in flow, then altcoins can get absolutely murdered, and we're seeing it. We're seeing altcoins in Satoshi terms at levels that people never thought they would see. And I think that's why you're not seeing as much absolute euphoria on the part of like the whole crypto space, because I think a lot of people have too much exposure in the altcoin market, not enough pure Bitcoin. And that's why you're not seeing people like screaming from the rooftops about how great this rally is. I think they're underexposed to Bitcoin, and we're seeing it play out right now, and it's interesting.
Are you guys predominantly in Bitcoin? Do you have any altcoin floating around the portfolio as well?
Yeah, no, we definitely...
Outside of the Hxro, of course.
We definitely have altcoins. We move in and out frequently. But, you start to get to levels of Bitcoin dominance where, whether it's 60%, 62, 65, where you've got altcoins that you like. It's funny, we talk about fundamentals in the altcoin market, and a lot of people laugh because, what are the fundamentals? But there are some. And, you try to pick the coins with the best fundamentals coupled with the best technical setups, and, we'll take positions. But it's, everyone who's then tried to rotate, even if you were, really overly exposed to Bitcoin, it's hard not to rotate into some of your favorite alt setups when Bitcoin dominance is at 62, 65, 68%, because, in the past, we've had a reversion to the mean, where we'll see once Bitcoin rallies and kind of settles down, then you see some of the more quality altcoins get flow, and when that money flow comes in, it can really drive them 2x, 3x, 5x really quickly, so it can make up for a few months of losses. But that's we'll see how it plays out this time around.
Yeah, and that's something we've been remarking here about a lot on the show, is that dominance rate, 65, 66%, I think it hit at one point before coming back down. Anything north of 60% is certainly worth noting. And you're right, it has been a predominantly Bitcoin-driven market for the last few months. It let it up and it let it down, and in spite of what direction it was moving, it kept growing in dominance. It was a very strange thing to watch. This week, let's hit some of the other big coins here as well before we wrap up here. I mentioned ETH up about 25 handles from our last show. Coming in showtime is at right around 234 or so. So a decent week for Ethereum out there. Litecoin, of course, I said, getting all the oxygen in the room. XRP also getting a little bit of a lift this week. It's kind of been one we talked about before. It's been locked in that low 30s range for so long. It broke out of it very briefly, then went right back down to it and actually went below it very briefly. Back up about close to 2 cents, right around 32 and a half, coming into the tail end of the show here. So a decent week here for XRP. And of course, Bitcoin Cash actually feeling a little bit of a lift this week as well, up about 45 handles out there, right around 350, 351 as we come into the final portion of the program here. All right, unfortunately, that music means we're out of time, listeners. We'll get to your questions next week, I promise here. But before we go, Rob, we had a great, far-reaching conversation about all sorts of aspects of the crypto space. If our listeners are intrigued, they want to learn more, maybe they want to buy some tokens, maybe they want to trade for themselves, and maybe they want to come in and kick the tires over there at Hxro, ticker symbol HXRO. Listeners, hit them again. Where should they go? What should they do?
Okay, well, Hxro token's listed on IDEX, and it's listed on Bittrex International. And, for non-US listeners, I definitely urge you to jump in the game. And this is a new way to play the markets. I think you will be pleasantly surprised at how you feel when you're looking at the market through the lens of Hxro and playing a little 5-minute moon wrecked on Bitcoin.
And Gordian Block, anything they can do on Gordian Block front? Should they follow you on Twitter there, perhaps?
Yeah, you can go to GordianBlock.io. GordianBlock.io to go to our website. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Robbie Levy, ROBBYLEVY, and my partner Dan Gunsberg is very vocal on Twitter, has some great takes. He's at Dan Gunsberg.
There you go. Give him a follow and check out the token. If you're outside the U.S., even if you're in the U.S., you can still look at it and get a sense for what's going on. So when they do switch here finally in the U.S., you'll be ready to go. And on behalf of Rob, I want to thank all of you out here for downloading, streaming, subscribing, and of course for sending in those questions. I promise we'll get to more of them next week. And we'll see you back here next week for more of the Crypto Rundown.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. The Options Insider Radio Network is sponsored by Fidelity Investments. Fidelity's Option Trade Builder tool can help you confidently build an options trade in 3 simple steps. Just choose a strategy, select a contract, and then review the benefits and risks of the trade. Learn more about Option Trade Builder at fidelity.com/options. Options trading entails significant risk and is not appropriate for all investors. Certain complex option strategies carry additional risk. Before trading options, contact Fidelity Investments by calling 800-544-5115 to receive a copy of the characteristics and risks of standardized options. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE SIPC.